guys, it's Quincy with Coin Club Crypto. Welcome to my channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and talk about it with your friends if you like what we have to talk about. Now, transactions matter. Now, what do I mean by that? So when people think of transactions in terms of blockchain, they typically think of financial transactions, or they typically think of exchange volumes, and they think of people engaging with different markets and making transactions. But what people don't think of in terms of blockchain is think of data. And they sort of do because you're dealing with data, but they don't think of just raw data transacting. Like me sending you some information because we're engaging with an application that has, some sort of engagement feature. So let's take an example, right? Let's say we had an application like Twitter operating on one of these blockchains. And in order for you to make posts and be able to engage with the applications, you need to essentially burn gas, whatever the native token is, to be able to do so. Well, every single time you engage with this application, you are going to be creating more transactions on the network, both in sharing information, but also in transacting with whatever smart contract or dApp that you're interacting with. So what ends up happening is all the transactions that are happening on the internet can now contribute to the demand that's happening on these different blockchains. And I'll get into what I mean by that too. So Twitter's an interesting example. You can sort of intangibly imagine like, oh, okay, cool, that's a lot of transactions if Twitter were to run on the blockchain. But like, what would something like this functionally look at? So let's look at something like a hospital or whatever, right? And it needs to share information of some sort. And let's say you have a hospital patient that may have an NFT that may be associated to their ID, that can be associated to a smart contract, that can share some financial, or I can share some medical data about themselves. Well, whenever someone wants to engage with that person's smart contract, well, they're going to have to essentially pay gas fees on the network to do so. Or whenever someone's going to have their smart contract engage with another smart contract or another entity, it's going to contribute more demand to the network because they need a native token to be able to pay the network fees. Now, in doing this, it may sound like, okay, well, if they're paying network fees, that fees can be small, right? Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Imagine every single application that you've ever used that shares information to some degree, that hosts information to some degree, and allows for some level of interaction between two parties or between you and the application itself. All of those will create transactions on the network because these are all engagements, and all of these engagements create more demand. It's really crazy to think about because, like I said, people think of transactions in terms of financial transactions, in terms of sort of like liquidity and markets, but they don't think of, well, an interaction of some sort. And when you think about this on the blockchain, it becomes quite crazy on like some of the demand for these blockchains, because people may go, oh, what's the demand for these blockchains? Well, look, if someone's able to create an application in which they're able to privately share information or publicly share information with people, and then people are using that application to share that information, that's more demand on the network, because now people have to burn the network token or spend the native token to be able to access that information and engage with each other. And it ends up being it's crazy to think about, because let's name a couple big applications: Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. These aren't even a handful of, I guess they're technically a handful, but this is barely even a handful of applications that I can choose of the hundreds of thousands of millions of applications that are out there that are all going to contribute in terms of transactions because, well, people engage with them. And it's really interesting to think about that, because when you start thinking of that in that terms, you start going, wow, demand just goes... Demand's insane. It's almost impossible to even imagine the amount of demand if you're looking in that capacity, because you're looking at, well, not only could there possibly be demand from all the transactions of the financial markets, there could be demand from all the transactions on the internet, period, adding demand to these networks. And it's crazy to think about that because, well, it seems like we're so focused on finance that we're not focused on some other technical aspects that may actually help build out these networks. And it's crazy to think about that. As easy as it is to have a transaction between two parties for financials, you can have that same easy interaction in terms of data. And that same interaction in terms of data contributes demand the same way that the financial transaction would also. It's just something to think about. I'll see you on the next one.